The Oklahoma sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked earth of Mitchell Farm, turning what should have been fertile soil into a patchwork of dried clay and withered dreams. James Mitchell stood at the edge of his cornfield, or what remained of it, his weathered hands gripping a handful of dust that slipped through his fingers like the hope he'd been clinging to for the past 3 years. At 48 years old, James looked a decade older. His face was carved with deep lines from squinting against the relentless sun, and his once dark hair had gone almost entirely gray. He wore the same faded denim shirt he'd worn for the past week, unable to muster the energy to care about much beyond keeping the farm running and his daughter fed. The Mitchell family had owned this land for 3 generations. James's grandfather, William Mitchell, had purchased these 200 acres back in 1952 with money saved from working the oil fields. His father, Robert Mitchell, had expanded the operation, adding cattle and modernizing the equipment. James had inherited the farm 15 years ago with pride and determination, certain he would continue the legacy and pass it on to his own children someday. But the past 3 years had been brutal. First came the drought, the worst Oklahoma had seen in 50 years. The Cimarron River that bordered the southern edge of his property had shrunk to a trickle, and the well water barely sufficed for the house, let alone irrigation. His corn yield dropped by 70%. The soybeans fared no better. Even the 20 head of cattle he'd managed to keep looked gaunt and tired, their ribs visible beneath dull coats. Then came the medical bills. His wife, Catherine Mitchell, had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 2 years ago. The woman who had stood beside him through every hard season, who had kept the farm's books, who had made their small farmhouse feel like a sanctuary. She fought with everything she had. James sold equipment, took out loans, drove her to Oklahoma City for treatments 3 times a week. But cancer didn't negotiate, didn't care about love or determination or the debt piling up like storm clouds. Catherine passed away 8 months ago on a Tuesday morning in March. James had been holding her hand when she took her last breath, and part of him died with her that day. "Dad?" The voice pulled him from his thoughts. Emily Mitchell stood at the edge of the field, her long brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and one of her mother's old flannel shirts. At 16, she looked so much like Catherine, it sometimes took James's breath away. The same green eyes, the same determined set to her jaw, the same way of tilting her head when she was worried. "Yeah, honey." James turned, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Patterson from the bank called again. He said it's urgent. Emily's voice was careful, controlled. She'd learned to mask her fear over the past year, but James could see it in the way she twisted the phone cord around her finger, in the slight tremor of her lower lip. Daniel Patterson. The name alone made James's stomach clench. Patterson had been the loan officer at Oklahoma Community Bank for 20 years. He'd known James since he was a kid, had attended Catherine's funeral, had even brought a casserole to the house afterward. But business was business, and Patterson had made it clear during their last conversation that the bank's patience was wearing thin. "I'll call him back," James said, walking toward the house. The farmhouse was a 2-story structure built in 1960. White paint peeling in places, the wraparound porch sagging slightly on the east side. Catherine had loved that porch. She'd spent summer evenings there with Emily, teaching her daughter to play guitar, singing old country songs as the sun set over the wheat fields. Inside, the house still held Catherine's presence. Her recipe books lined the kitchen shelf. Her reading glasses sat on the side table by the worn leather couch. James couldn't bring himself to move anything. Sometimes, late at night, he could almost hear her humming in the kitchen or smell her lavender perfume drifting through the hallway. Emily followed him inside, hovering near the kitchen counter as James picked up the landline phone. His cell phone had been shut off 3 months ago. Another bill he couldn't pay. He dialed the bank's number from memory. Oklahoma Community Bank. How may I direct your call? The receptionist's chipper voice felt like sandpaper against James's nerves. Daniel Patterson, please. This is James Mitchell. A pause. One moment, Mr. Mitchell. The hold music was an instrumental version of God Bless America. James leaned against the counter, watching Emily pretend to be interested in something on her laptop at the kitchen table. She'd been accepted to Oklahoma State University with a partial scholarship. Classes started in August. That was 4 months away, and James had no idea how he'd afford even the reduced tuition, let alone room and board. James! Patterson's voice came through, warm but professional. Thanks for calling back. What can I do for you, Dan? I think you know why I'm calling. Patterson sighed. The board met yesterday. I fought for you, James. I really did. But you're 6 months behind on the mortgage, and the agricultural loan from last year hasn't seen a payment in 4 months. James closed his eyes. The numbers swam in his head like sharks circling. $48,000 on the mortgage, $32,000 on the equipment loan, $18,000 in medical debt from Catherine's treatments that insurance hadn't covered. And that didn't include the smaller debts, the feed store, the veterinarian, the utility companies that kept sending warning notices. How much time do I have? James asked quietly. The board is initiating foreclosure proceedings. You have 90 days to bring the account current or negotiate a sale of the property. Patterson's voice softened. I'm sorry, James. If there was another way... 90 days, James repeated, the words hollow in his mouth. There's one other option, Patterson said hesitantly. Berkshire Agricultural Group has been buying up properties in the county. They're offering fair market value, cash deals. I could set up a meeting if you're interested. James had heard about Berkshire Agricultural. They were a massive corporation that bought struggling farms, consolidated them into industrial operations, and displaced the families who'd worked the land for generations. It was everything his grandfather and father had stood against. I'll think about it, James said, knowing he wouldn't. The clock is ticking, James. Don't wait too long. Patterson paused. And James, I really am sorry. Catherine was a wonderful woman. You both deserved better than this. The line went dead. James stood there holding the phone, the dial tone buzzing in his ear like angry bees. 90 days. 12 weeks. That was all the time he had to save 100 years of family history, to keep the promise he'd made to his father on his deathbed, to give Emily something to hold on to. Dad? Emily's voice was small, younger than her 16 years. What did he say? James set the phone down carefully, as if it might shatter. He turned to face his daughter, this brave, beautiful girl who'd already lost so much. She deserved the truth. Catherine had always insisted on that. No sugarcoating, no false promises, just honest love and respect. We have 90 days to pay what we owe. Or the bank takes the farm, James said. Emily's face went pale. How much do we owe? Too much, sweetheart. More than I can make in 3 months, even if it rains tomorrow and the crops miraculously come back. There has to be something we can do. Emily stood, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. What about selling some of the land? Or the cattle? Or, I've already sold everything I can sell without losing the farm entirely. James interrupted gently. The tractor, the combine, most of the cattle, your mom's car. All I've got left is the land and the house. And if we lose those, we lose everything. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back fiercely. She was so much like her mother. I can defer college, get a job in town, maybe at the diner or the hardware store. I can help. No. James's voice was firm. Your education isn't negotiable. Your mom and I—" His voice caught. "Your mom made me promise. No matter what happened, you'd go to college. You'd have opportunities we never had. That promise is the only thing I can still keep for her." "But Dad—" "No buts, Em." James crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. She was tall now, almost as tall as Catherine had been. But she still fit under his chin like when she was a little girl. "We'll figure something out. I always do, right?" But even as he said it, James knew he was lying. There was no miracle coming. No sudden rain to revive the crops. No lottery win or inheritance from a long-lost relative. Just 90 days of watching the calendar tick down to the day when strangers would come and take everything his family had built. That night, after Emily had gone to bed, James sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey he couldn't really afford and stared out at the dark fields. The moon was full, casting silver light across the dried stalks of failed corn. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, and another answered. Catherine's guitar leaned against the porch railing where Emily had left it after practicing. James picked it up, running his fingers over the worn wood. Catherine had bought it at a pawn shop in Tulsa when they were first married, trading her grandmother's wedding ring for it. She'd learned to play watching YouTube videos, determined to master the instrument. He strummed a chord, wincing at how out of tune it was. Music had never been his gift. That belonged to Catherine and Emily, who could harmonize effortlessly while he fumbled through basic chords. But sitting there in the darkness, James found himself humming an old Reba McEntire song Catherine used to love. "The Greatest Man I Never Knew." Catherine had worshipped Reba McEntire. She'd played her albums constantly, had posters of the country star in their bedroom before they were married, had dragged James to a concert in Oklahoma City for their 10th anniversary. She'd said Reba's voice had steel and vulnerability all at once, could break your heart and make you feel strong at the same time. "I could use some of that strength now," James whispered to the empty night. "I don't know how to do this without you, Cat. I don't know how to save our home. I don't know how to tell Emily that everything her great-grandfather built is going to disappear." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of dry earth and distant rain that would never come. James finished his whiskey and set the glass down, his hands trembling slightly. Tomorrow, he'd have to start looking at options. Maybe swallow his pride and call Berkshire Agricultural. Maybe file for bankruptcy and try to salvage something. But tonight, he would sit on this porch and remember when Catherine was alive, when the fields were green, when the future had seemed like something worth fighting for. Emily Mitchell lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling of her childhood bedroom. The walls were still painted the pale yellow her mother had chosen when Emily was 12, saying it was the color of sunshine and hope. Glow-in-the-dark stars dotted the ceiling in the rough shape of constellations Catherine had helped her arrange one summer evening. Through the thin walls, Emily could hear her father moving around downstairs. The creak of the porch steps, the clink of glass. She knew he was drinking, knew he was trying to carry all the weight alone, just like he'd been doing since Mom died. Emily rolled over and grabbed her phone from the nightstand. She'd been using the neighbor's Wi-Fi since their internet had been shut off 2 months ago, stealing a weak signal that barely worked. The screen glowed in the darkness, showing 12% battery. She'd have to charge it at school tomorrow. She opened Instagram, scrolling mindlessly past photos from her classmates. Brittany Henderson at some beach in Florida for spring break. Kevin Walsh showing off his new truck. Dakota Rivers with her acceptance letter to the University of Oklahoma. Full scholarship for volleyball. Everyone's life was moving forward, while Emily's was falling apart. She closed Instagram and opened her photos instead, swiping through images from better times. Mom at the county fair, holding a blue ribbon for her peach pie. Dad teaching her to drive the tractor, both of them laughing. The three of them at Christmas 2 years ago, before the diagnosis, before everything changed. Emily's chest tightened. She could still hear her mother's voice sometimes, clear as if Catherine was sitting right beside her. Mitchell women don't quit, baby girl. We face things head-on, no matter how scary they are. But what do I do, Mom? Emily whispered to the darkness. How do I help Dad when he won't let me? Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Rachel Cooper. Rachel lived 5 miles down the road, on a ranch that had been doing better than most. Her father worked in the oil fields and only ranched on the side. Rachel, you awake? Emily, yeah. Rachel, how'd it go with the bank? Emily, 90 days. Then we lose everything. Rachel, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? Emily stared at the question, her thumbs hovering over the keyboard. What could she do? She was 16 years old with $200 in savings from birthday money and babysitting jobs. She couldn't get a loan, couldn't sell anything valuable because they didn't have anything valuable left. Emily, I don't know. Rachel, my dad said he could give your dad some work if he needs it. We're building a new barn and could use help. The offer was kind, but Emily knew her father wouldn't take it. James Mitchell had too much pride to accept charity from neighbors, even when that pride was drowning them. He'd turn it down politely, then feel guilty for not being able to provide, then retreat further into himself. Emily, thanks, I'll tell him. She set the phone down and sat up, pulling her mother's old flannel shirt tighter around herself. The room felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing in. She got up and walked to her desk, where her laptop sat plugged into the only working outlet. Her college acceptance letter from Oklahoma State sat in a frame beside the laptop, a gift from her mother, given 2 weeks before she died. Catherine had been so proud, so certain Emily would escape the cycle of drought and debt that had claimed so many farming families. You're going to do amazing things, Em, Catherine had said, her voice weak but determined. You're going to study business and come back here and show everyone how it's done. You're going to save this place. But how could Emily save anything from a dorm room 3 hours away while her father lost everything? She opened her laptop, the screen casting blue light across the dark room. Without thinking, she opened YouTube and typed Reba McEntire, her mother's favorite artist, the voice that had been the soundtrack to Emily's childhood. Videos populated the screen, concerts, interviews, music videos. Emily clicked on a recent interview from the Grand Ole Opry. Reba looked amazing for someone in her 60s, her red hair still vibrant, her smile genuine and warm. The interviewer asked about Reba's upcoming tour, her new album, her acting projects. Then the questions shifted to something more personal. You grew up on a ranch in Oklahoma, the interviewer said. Do you ever miss that life? Reba's expression softened. Every day. My daddy was a rodeo champion, and my mama kept the ranch running. We didn't have much money, but we had land and family and purpose. Those roots shaped everything about who I am. Do you ever go back? When I can. Oklahoma will always be home, and I never forget where I came from. The struggles ranch families face, the way one bad season can change everything. Reba leaned forward, her voice earnest. That's why I try to give back when I can. Those communities raised me. They taught me the values that got me where I am today. Emily paused the video, Reba's face frozen in that earnest expression. An idea began forming in her mind. Crazy, impossible, desperate. But what did they have to lose? In 90 days, they'd lose everything anyway. She opened a new tab and searched how to contact Reba McEntire. Several options appeared. Her website, social media accounts, a fan mail address for her management company in Nashville. Emily's heart raced as she clicked on the website contact form. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. "Mitchell women don't quit, baby girl." Emily opened a blank document and began to type. "Dear Ms. McEntire, my name is Emily Mitchell, and I'm 16 years old. I live on a farm in Oklahoma, about 2 hours from where you grew up in Chalky. I'm writing to you because my mom always said you were the kind of person who understood what it meant to fight for your family and your land. I hope she was right, because we're running out of fight." Emily paused, her fingers trembling over the keys. Was this stupid? Would anyone even read this letter? But she thought of her father on the porch, drinking alone, carrying all that weight. She thought of her mother's guitar, out of tune and silent. She thought of 90 days. She kept typing. "My mom, Catherine Mitchell, died 8 months ago from cancer. She loved your music more than anything except me and my dad. She used to sing Fancy while she cooked dinner, would belt out 'Consider Me Gone' in the truck, even though she knew all the neighbors could hear. When things got hard after her diagnosis, she'd play your albums and say, 'If Reba can survive what she's been through, we can survive this.' But we didn't all survive. Mom died, and she took part of my dad with her. Now he's trying to save our farm alone, and he's failing. Not because he isn't strong or hardworking. My dad works from sunrise to midnight. But the drought killed our crops 3 years running. The medical bills took everything we'd saved. And now the bank is taking the farm in 90 days, unless we come up with almost $100,000. Emily's vision blurred with tears. She blinked them away and continued. "I know you probably get thousands of letters like this. I know you can't save every struggling farm in Oklahoma. But Mom always said you had roots like ours, deep and strong, connected to land that matters. She said you never forgot where you came from. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for help, for advice, for anything that might give my dad hope again. Because right now, he's given up. He sits on the porch at night, holding Mom's guitar, and I can see him disappearing a little more each day. This farm has been in our family for 3 generations. My great-grandfather bought it with his own hands and sweat. My grandpa expanded it and made it thrive. My dad inherited it and loved it and wanted to pass it to me someday. It's not just land, it's our history, our identity, our connection to everyone who came before. If you read this, thank you. If you don't, I understand. But I had to try. Mom would have wanted me to try. She would have said, 'Mitchell women don't quit, baby girl.' Sincerely, Emily Mitchell, Mitchell Farm, Oklahoma." Emily read through the letter 3 times, making small edits, adding their address and her email. Her phone buzzed. 5% battery remaining. She copied the letter and pasted it into the contact form on Reba's website, then sent copies to every social media account and management email she could find. The laptop clock read 2:47 a.m. In a few hours, she'd need to get up for school, pretend everything was fine, sit through classes about calculus and literature while her family's world collapsed. But tonight, she'd done something, taken action instead of just accepting defeat. Her mother would be proud. Emily crawled back into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. Outside, she could hear her father finally coming inside, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. He paused outside her door. She could see his shadow in the crack beneath it, then moved on to his own room. "Please," Emily whispered to the glow in the dark stars on her ceiling. "Please, let someone read it. Please let something good happen for once." 3 weeks passed. Emily checked her email obsessively. Before school, during lunch, after homework, late at night. Nothing. No response from Reba's team. No magical intervention, just the steady march of days toward foreclosure. The farm deteriorated further. A storm broke one of the barn windows. 2 more cattle had to be sold when they developed infections the veterinarian couldn't afford to treat. The truck started making a grinding noise that James insisted wasn't serious, but clearly was. At school, Emily maintained her grades through sheer determination. Her teachers knew about the situation. Everyone in their small town of Redwater knew, but they mercifully didn't make a big deal of it. Mrs. Hawkins, her English teacher, pulled her aside one afternoon. "Emily, I want you to know that no matter what happens, your future isn't determined by circumstances," she said, her hand gentle on Emily's shoulder. "You're brilliant and capable. Oklahoma State will be lucky to have you." "If I can afford to go," Emily replied quietly. "There are ways. Scholarships, grants, work-study programs. Don't give up." But giving up felt inevitable. The calendar showed 63 days until foreclosure. James had started packing boxes, going through Catherine's things with a hollow expression. He'd stopped talking about finding solutions and started talking about what comes next. Emily came home from school one Thursday afternoon to find her father in the kitchen with papers spread across the table. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. Sit down," he said gently. "We need to talk." Emily set her backpack down slowly and slid into a chair. "What's wrong?" "I met with Daniel Patterson again today, and with a representative from Berkshire Agricultural." James rubbed his face tiredly. "They're offering $250,000 for the property. That would cover our debts and leave enough for a fresh start somewhere else." "Somewhere else?" Emily's voice rose. "Dad, this is our home. This is—" "I know what it is," James interrupted, his voice heavy. "But sometimes you have to know when you're beat. I can't keep dragging you down with me. You need stability. I need my father to fight." Emily stood, her chair scraping against the linoleum. "I need you to be who you were before Mom died. She wouldn't want you to give up. Your mother isn't here." James's voice cracked. "She's gone, Em, and I'm doing my best. But my best isn't good enough. It hasn't been good enough for a long time." Emily felt tears streaming down her face. "So what? We just surrender? We let some corporation take everything Grandpa and Great-Grandpa built? We walk away and pretend none of it mattered?" "We survive," James said quietly. "We move to town. I get a regular job. You go to college, and we build a new life. That's what adults do. They make hard choices to protect their kids." Emily wiped her face with her sleeve, anger and grief churning in her chest. "I wrote to Reba McEntire," she blurted out. James blinked. "What?" "3 weeks ago. I found her website and wrote her a letter telling her about us, about the farm, about how Mom loved her music. I asked for help." Emily's voice wavered. "I know it was stupid. I know nobody read it. But I had to try something." James's expression softened. He stood and walked around the table, pulling Emily into a hug. "That wasn't stupid, sweetheart. That was brave. Your mom would have done the same thing. But it didn't work." Emily sobbed into his shirt. "Nothing works." "I know." James held her tighter. "I know." They stood there in the kitchen as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, holding on to each other as their world fell apart. The morning of May the 2nd started like any other. James woke at dawn to feed the remaining cattle, his body moving through familiar routines on autopilot. The kitchen coffee pot sputtered to life, filling the house with the bitter aroma that had replaced the smell of Catherine's breakfast cooking. 57 days until foreclosure. The number lived in James's head like a countdown timer he couldn't shut off. He'd signed the preliminary paperwork with Berkshire Agricultural yesterday. The final closing would happen in 30 days, giving them time to pack and find a place in town. Daniel Patterson had looked relieved when James initialed each page, probably glad to close the file on another failed family farm. Emily had barely spoken to him since their fight 3 days ago. She went to school, came home, did her homework in her room, and emerged only for silent dinners they both picked at, without appetite. The house felt like a tomb. James was pouring his second cup of coffee when he heard tires on the gravel driveway. He glanced out the window, expecting to see the feed delivery truck, or maybe Tom Henderson from the neighboring farm. Instead, he saw a white SUV with rental plates and a second vehicle behind it, a black van with tinted windows. "What the hell?" James muttered, setting his coffee down. He walked onto the porch as the SUV parked, and a woman stepped out. She wore designer jeans, expensive boots, and a cream-colored blouse that probably cost more than James's monthly grocery budget. Oversized sunglasses hid her face, and her auburn hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She removed her sunglasses, and James's heart stopped. It was Reba McEntire. James stood frozen on the porch, certain he was hallucinating. Maybe the stress had finally broken him. Maybe he was still in bed, dreaming. But Reba walked toward him with a warm smile, her hand extended, and she was definitely real. James Mitchell. Her voice was exactly like it sounded on the radio, rich and warm with that distinctive Oklahoma lilt. Yes, I'm... James couldn't form a complete sentence. He wiped his palm on his jeans and shook her hand, feeling like he'd been struck by lightning. "I'm Reba McEntire, though I suspect you know that." She smiled wider. "Is Emily home? I'd like to talk to both of you, if that's all right. Emily's getting ready for school. Wait, how do you..." James's brain was struggling to process what was happening. "How do you know Emily's name?" "Because she wrote me the most heartfelt letter I've read in a long time," Reba said gently. "And I've been trying to figure out the best way to respond. So I thought, why write back when I could just show up?" James felt his knees go weak. He grabbed the porch railing for support. "Emily wrote you." "She said she did. But I thought..." "Dad?" Emily's voice came from the doorway behind him. She'd frozen mid-step, her backpack hanging from one hand, her mouth open in shock. "Oh my God." "Hi, Emily." Reba's expression softened even more. "I got your letter." Emily dropped her backpack. Her hands flew to her mouth, and tears immediately started streaming down her face. "You're here. You're actually here. I didn't think anyone would read it." "Well, I did read it. All of it. And it broke my heart." Reba glanced at the van, where a man with a camera had emerged. "This is Travis Wheeler, part of my team. I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to document some of this. Sometimes showing people what's happening in rural America does more good than just talking about it." James looked at Emily, who nodded through her tears, then back at Reba. "I don't understand. Why are you here?" "Because I meant what I said in that interview Emily saw. I never forget where I came from." Reba gestured to the farm around them. "May I?" "Of course," James said quickly, stepping aside. "Please, come in. I'm sorry. The house is a mess. We've been packing." "Don't apologize." Reba walked up the porch steps, pausing to look at Catherine's guitar leaning against the railing. "Someone plays?" "My mom did," Emily said quietly, finding her voice. "She loved your music. She played your songs all the time." Reba picked up the guitar carefully, running her fingers over the strings. "May I?" Emily nodded. Reba sat down on the porch steps, the guitar in her lap, and began tuning it by ear. Within moments, she was strumming a gentle melody, then singing softly, "The greatest man I never knew." James felt his throat close up. It was Catherine's favorite song. the one she'd asked him to play at her funeral, the one he couldn't hear without feeling like his heart was being torn open. When Reba finished, she looked up at both of them. "Your mama had good taste in music." "She had good taste in everything," Emily whispered. They went inside, Reba insisting on sitting at the kitchen table like a regular visitor rather than a superstar. Travis set up his camera discreetly in the corner. James made fresh coffee with trembling hands while Emily sat across from Reba, still looking like she might wake up any second. "Tell me about the farm," Reba said, accepting the coffee mug from James. "Your family's history here." For the next hour, James and Emily told her everything. About William Mitchell buying the land in 1952. About Robert expanding the operation. About James and Catherine's plans for the future, cut short by drought and disease. About the mounting debts, the failed crops, the impossible choice between surrender and ruin. Reba listened intently, asking questions, taking notes on her phone. She didn't interrupt or offer platitudes. She just listened with the kind of focused attention that made both James and Emily feel truly heard for the first time in months. When they finished, Reba set down her coffee mug and looked at them seriously. "Here's what I know about farming families. They're proud. They don't like accepting help. They'd rather go down with the ship than admit they need a hand." She leaned forward. "But there's a difference between pride and wisdom. And wisdom says that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let people who care about you step in." "I don't understand," James said carefully. "What are you offering?" "A chance," Reba replied. "Not a handout, a partnership. I've been wanting to do something meaningful in Oklahoma for a while. Something that helps families like yours survive these tough years. I'm proposing we set up an event here on your farm. A benefit concert and fundraiser that would bring attention to what farming families are facing, raise money to help you get current on your debts, and maybe even help some other families in the area." James stared at her. "A concert? Here? Why not? You've got 200 acres. We could set up a stage, bring in some sponsors, sell tickets. I've got connections with other country artists who would donate their time. We could make it a real event, not just music, but vendors, agriculture education, local food. Show people what farming really means." "That's incredibly generous," James said slowly. "But I can't accept—" "Dad," Emily interrupted, her voice sharp. She looked at him with Catherine's fierce determination. "Don't you dare say you can't accept. Mom would tell you to stop being stubborn and say thank you." Reba smiled. "I like this kid." James felt something cracking inside him, the wall he'd built around his pride and pain. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Emily urged. "Please, Dad, say yes." James looked around the kitchen, at Catherine's recipe books, at the faded wallpaper she'd always meant to replace, at the scratches in the table from years of family meals. He thought about his grandfather buying this land with oil field wages, about his father teaching him to drive a tractor in these same fields, about Catherine standing at this very sink, singing Reba songs while she washed dishes. "Yes," he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes, and thank you. You don't have to thank me," Reba said gently. "This is what people do for each other, especially people who understand what it means to fight for something you love." Hakeem. The next 3 weeks transformed the farm in ways James could never have imagined. Reba's team descended on Mitchell Farm with the efficiency of a military operation, but with a kindness that surprised James at every turn. Mark Davidson, Reba's tour manager, was a tall man from Tennessee with a clipboard and a headset who seemed to know everyone in the music business. He coordinated with local contractors to build a stage at the north end of the property, near where the cornfield had once thrived. "We're bringing in equipment from Nashville," Mark explained to James as they walked the property. "Sound system, lighting, generators. Don't worry about the cost. It's all covered." Rachel Cooper's father, Bill Cooper, offered to organize parking and transportation. Tom Henderson provided fencing materials to section off areas for vendors and food trucks. Even Daniel Patterson from the bank called to say he was pushing back the foreclosure deadline to give the benefit time to happen. "Looks like you've got some powerful friends," Patterson said, and James could hear the smile in his voice. "Good luck, James. I mean that." Emily threw herself into helping, her energy returning after months of depression and worry. She coordinated with local businesses to donate items for a silent auction. She designed flyers and managed social media with Rachel, spreading the word about the benefit concert. Within a week, the event had thousands of online followers and preliminary ticket sales that exceeded everyone's expectations. "Dad, look at this!" Emily burst into the kitchen one evening, her laptop open. "We've sold 2,000 tickets already, and artists keep volunteering to perform. Blake Shelton just said he'd come. And Miranda Lambert. And, oh my God, Luke Combs." James couldn't quite believe it. A month ago, he'd been preparing to lose everything. Now, country music stars were offering to perform on his farm to save it. Reba visited twice more during the planning stages, each time bringing new ideas and infectious enthusiasm. She walked the property with James, asking about irrigation systems and soil composition, showing genuine interest in the farming side of things. "My daddy would have loved talking to you," she said during one visit. "He understood what it takes to work the land. The patience, the faith, the willingness to keep going when everything tells you to quit." "Your father sounds like a wise man," James replied. "He was. Stubborn as hell, too, like someone else I know." Reba smiled at him pointedly. James laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. "Catherine used to say the same thing. I would have liked her," Reba said softly. "Anyone who raised a daughter like Emily must have been something special." The benefit concert was scheduled for May 30th, exactly 2 weeks before the foreclosure deadline. As the date approached, James found himself feeling something he'd almost forgotten: hope. The morning of May 30th dawned clear and beautiful. The Oklahoma sky a brilliant blue that seemed to promise better things ahead. James stood on his porch at 5 a.m., coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint gold across the stubbled fields, and the massive stage that had been erected on his property. The transformation was staggering. Where failed corn had once stood, now rows of chairs stretched across the ground, enough seating for 5,000 people. Food trucks lined the southern fence, their colorful signs advertising everything from barbecue to funnel cakes. Vendor tents dotted the landscape, selling handmade crafts and agricultural products from local farms. A massive banner hung above the stage: Mitchell Farm Benefit Concert, saving Oklahoma agriculture, one family at a time. "It doesn't look real," Emily said, stepping out onto the porch beside him. She wore jeans and a flannel shirt Catherine had embroidered with wildflowers years ago. "Like we're going to wake up and it'll all be gone." "I keep thinking the same thing," James admitted. "Part of me still can't believe this is happening." Mark Davidson's voice crackled over a walkie-talkie from somewhere near the stage. "Sound check in 30 minutes. All performers to the green room. The barn." The barn had been converted into a makeshift backstage area, complete with couches, mirrors, and refreshments. Yesterday, James had watched Blake Shelton drinking sweet tea on bales of hay while discussing cattle breeds with Tom Henderson. The surreal had become normal. By 9 a.m., volunteers began arriving, dozens of them organized by Emily and Rachel. They wore bright orange T-shirts that said Mitchell Farm Team and dispersed to various stations: ticket booth, parking coordination, vendor assistance, security. The local sheriff's department had donated officers to help manage the crowd. Rachel found Emily near the stage, both girls buzzing with nervous energy. "The parking field is ready. Your dad's pasture can fit about 800 cars, and we've got shuttle services running from the overflow lots in town." "Perfect." Emily checked her clipboard, overwhelmed but determined. "What about the silent auction?" "Set up in the barn's side room. We've got over 100 items donated. Everything from restaurant gift certificates to a signed guitar from Keith Urban to a weekend stay at the Hendersons' guest ranch." "Keith Urban donated?" Emily's eyes widened. "Yep. Reba called in every favor she had. She's not messing around." By noon, vehicles started rolling down the farm's long driveway. Families from across Oklahoma, country music fans from neighboring states, reporters from newspapers and TV stations. The parking fields filled rapidly. The shuttle buses ran constantly. The air filled with excitement and the smell of grilling meat and the distant sound of a local bluegrass band warming up on a small side stage. James walked through the growing crowd, shaking hands, accepting hugs, thanking people who'd driven hours to support a family they'd never met. An older woman from Tulsa grabbed his hand tightly. "My grandfather lost his farm in the Depression," she said, tears in her eyes. "Your story. It matters. You matter. Don't ever think you don't." James felt his own eyes sting. "Thank you. That means more than you know." At 2 p.m., Reba arrived in the same white SUV, but this time with a security detail and a palpable shift in energy. She wore a stunning red dress with cowboy boots, her hair styled perfectly, looking every inch the superstar she was. But when she saw James and Emily near the stage, her face lit up with genuine warmth. "Are you ready for this?" she asked them, pulling them both into a hug that felt maternal and real despite the cameras flashing around them. "I don't think we'll ever be ready," James admitted, "but we're grateful. We can't thank you enough for—" "Save the thanks for after," Reba interrupted with a wink. "We've got a show to put on." The concert officially started at 3 p.m. Local acts went first. The Bluegrass Band, a teenage country singer from Redwater High School. A folk trio that had James and half the crowd in tears with their song about Oklahoma roots. Between acts, Mark Davidson came on stage to talk about the realities facing family farms, showing statistics about foreclosures and consolidation while encouraging people to donate. The donation line grew steadily throughout the afternoon. A massive thermometer poster tracked the goal: $100,000 to save Mitchell Farm. By 5 p.m., they'd reached $45,000. Then the headliners started performing. Miranda Lambert took the stage at 5:30, her powerful voice filling the farm with songs about heartbreak and resilience. She dedicated "The House That Built Me" to Catherine's memory, and Emily sobbed openly in the wings while James held her shoulders. Blake Shelton followed with a rowdy set that had the entire crowd singing along to "God's Country" and "Ole Red." Between songs, he talked about his own Oklahoma roots, about the importance of preserving agricultural heritage. "These families are the backbone of America," Blake said into the microphone, his voice serious. "And when one of them falls, we all feel it. So dig deep tonight, folks. Give what you can. Let's show the Mitchells what community really means." The thermometer reached $78,000. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Reba took the stage. The crowd erupted, thousands of voices screaming her name. She stood there for a moment, taking it in, then raised her hand for quiet. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice carrying across the farm with crystal clarity. 3 weeks ago, I received a letter from a brave 16-year-old girl named Emily Mitchell. She told me about her family's struggle, about her mother's love for my music, about watching her father try to carry the weight of the world alone. That letter reminded me why I do this, why any of us do this. It's not just about the music. It's about connection. It's about remembering where we came from and helping those who are still there. Reba gestured to where James and Emily stood in the wings. James, Emily, come out here. Emily grabbed her father's hand, and they walked onto the stage together, blinking in the lights, overwhelmed by the sea of faces turned toward them. Reba put an arm around each of them. "This is what courage looks like," Reba told the crowd. "James here has worked this farm for 25 years, continuing a legacy his grandfather started. He's faced drought, loss, debt, and heartbreak. But he's still standing. And with your help tonight, he's going to keep standing. He's going to keep this farm alive for his daughter, for his family, for everyone who believes that some things are worth fighting for." The crowd roared its approval. Reba nodded to Mark off stage, and the thermometer updated on the massive screens flanking the stage. $98,000. "We're almost there," Reba said. "Just $2,000 more, and we save Mitchell Farm. Who's going to put us over the top?" For a moment, silence. Then a voice from the crowd. "I'll do it! 2,000!" It was Bill Cooper, Rachel's father, his hand raised high. The thermometer changed. $100,000. The crowd exploded. People jumped to their feet, cheering and crying and hugging strangers. Emily collapsed against her father, sobbing. James held her, his own tears streaming freely as he looked out at thousands of people celebrating not just a financial goal reached, but a victory for something bigger: community, compassion, the refusal to let good people fall. Reba let them have their moment, then stepped back to the microphone. "But wait," she said with a smile, "we're not done yet." She nodded to Mark again, and another announcement appeared on the screens. Additional proceeds will fund a new Oklahoma Farm Assistance Program through the Reba McEntire Foundation, providing emergency grants to family farms in crisis. The crowd cheered again. And as they did, something extraordinary happened. The donations kept coming. People lined up at donation stations. Others pledged money through the online portal. The thermometer climbed. $110,000, $125,000, $150,000. By the time Reba finished her set 2 hours later, the total stood at $187,000. James couldn't speak, couldn't process it. He stood on that stage with his daughter, watching Reba sing Fancy and Consider Me Gone and I'm a Survivor, the same songs Catherine had loved, and felt his wife's presence as clearly as if she were standing beside him. When the concert finally ended near midnight, James found Reba in the barn, signing autographs and taking pictures with fans. She looked exhausted, but happy. When she saw him approaching, she excused herself and met him halfway. "I don't have words," James said simply. "There aren't words big enough." "You don't need words," Reba replied, giving him a tired but genuine smile. "Just promise me you'll keep fighting. Keep this farm alive. Teach Emily everything your daddy taught you, and let her teach her kids someday. That's how we preserve what matters." "I promise," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "On Catherine's memory. I promise." Reba hugged him tightly, then pulled back and looked around the farm, at the stage being dismantled, at the volunteers cleaning up, at the last few cars pulling away. "Your wife would be proud of you, of both of you. She always loved your music," James said. "She'd be losing her mind right now, knowing you were here, that you did all this. Then this is for her too," Reba said softly. "For all the strong women who hold families together, who fight battles nobody sees, who leave legacies of love and courage. 3 months later, James stood in the same cornfield where Reba's concert stage had been erected. But now the view was dramatically different. Green stalks of corn rose waist-high, healthier than anything he'd grown in 5 years. The irrigation system, purchased with leftover benefit funds, hummed efficiently in the background, ensuring every plant received adequate water despite the ongoing drought. Emily worked beside him, checking moisture levels in the soil with equipment they'd been able to afford thanks to the financial breathing room the benefit had provided. She wore her Oklahoma State University t-shirt. Classes started in 3 weeks, and her tuition was paid in full through a combination of scholarships and the farm's improved financial situation. "This section's looking good," Emily announced, showing him the moisture reader. "The new system is working perfectly." "Your mom would love seeing this," James said, wiping sweat from his forehead. The August heat was oppressive, but for the first time in years, he faced it with hope instead of dread. She always believed this farm would come back. The past 3 months had been transformative. The $187,000 from the benefit concert had covered all their debts: the mortgage arrears, the agricultural loans, the medical bills that had haunted them. They'd even had enough left over to make crucial repairs. New windows for the barn, a functioning irrigation system, essential equipment purchases, and some money set aside for Emily's college expenses. But more than the financial relief, the benefit had given them something intangible: community support and national attention that led to ongoing opportunities. The story had been covered by every major news outlet. James had been interviewed by agricultural magazines, invited to speak at farming conferences, and even consulted by the state legislature about supporting family farms. The Reba McEntire Foundation had formally launched its Oklahoma Farm Assistance Program, with James serving on the advisory board. In 3 months, they'd already helped 7 families avoid foreclosure, providing emergency grants and connecting farmers with resources. James found purpose in this work, a way to honor what Reba had done for them by paying it forward. "Dad!" Emily's excited voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Look who's here!" A familiar white SUV was coming up the driveway. James felt his heart lift. Reba had called last week saying she'd be passing through Oklahoma and wanted to check on them, but he hadn't quite believed it would happen. They walked back to the farmhouse together, arriving just as Reba stepped out of the vehicle. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, oversized sunglasses pushed back in her hair, looking more like a neighbor stopping by than a superstar. "There's my favorite farming family," Reba called out, spreading her arms wide. She hugged Emily first, then James, then stood back to look at both of them. "You both look wonderful. Healthy. Happy." "We are," James said, and realized he meant it. "For the first time in years, we actually are." They walked the farm together, Reba genuinely interested in every detail. James showed her the irrigation system, explained his crop rotation plans, discussed the 4 new cattle he'd purchased, young heifers that would rebuild the herd over time. Emily talked about her college plans, her voice bubbling with excitement about studying agricultural business and economics. "I want to come back here," Emily explained as they walked past the field where the concert had been held. "Get my degree, maybe work in agricultural policy for a few years, then come home and help Dad modernize the operation. Show people how family farms can survive in the 21st century." "That's exactly what the world needs," Reba said approvingly. "Smart young people who understand both the tradition and the innovation required to keep farming viable." They ended up on the porch, Catherine's porch, where her guitar still leaned against the railing. Emily had been taking lessons online, slowly learning the songs her mother used to play. Reba picked up the guitar without asking, as comfortable with it as if it were her own. "How about a song?" she suggested. For Catherine, she played a gentle melody, then began singing, Consider Me Gone, one of Catherine's favorites. James and Emily sat on the porch steps, listening, and it felt like Catherine was there with them, her presence woven into every note. When the song ended, Reba set the guitar down carefully. "I have something for you both," she said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out an envelope and handed it to James. "Open it." Inside was a check for $25,000 and a letter on official foundation letterhead. James read it aloud, his voice shaking. The Reba McEntire Foundation is pleased to award Mitchell Farm a sustainability grant to support ongoing agricultural innovation, youth education programs, and community outreach. This farm has become a symbol of resilience and community strength, and we believe its story can inspire others facing similar challenges. "Reba, we can't," James started. "You can, and you will," Reba interrupted firmly. "This isn't charity, James. This is investment. I believe in what you're building here. Not just a farm, but a model for how we save family agriculture in America. Use this money to expand your irrigation, maybe host workshops for other farmers. Create something lasting." Emily's eyes were bright with tears. "We don't know how to thank you. You saved us. You saved everything. You saved yourselves," Reba corrected gently. "You had the courage to ask for help. You did the work. You refused to give up. I just gave you a platform to tell your story, and people responded because your story matters." They talked for another hour, sharing sweet tea and stories. Reba told them about her upcoming tour, her plans to feature the Farm Assistance Program at each concert venue, her hope to expand the initiative to other states. James and Emily shared their dreams for the farm's future, their plans to honor Catherine's memory by creating something she would have been proud of. As the sun began to set, painting the Oklahoma sky in familiar shades of gold and crimson, Reba prepared to leave. She hugged them both again, holding on a moment longer than necessary. "Remember," she said, looking James in the eye, "the hard times aren't over. There'll be more droughts, more challenges, more moments when you want to quit. But you know now that you don't have to face them alone. You've got community, you've got support, and you've got each other." "We'll remember," James promised, "and we'll be here for others the way you were here for us." Reba smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had captivated millions. "That's all I could ask for." They watched her SUV drive away, the dust trail glowing gold in the sunset. When she disappeared from view, Emily leaned against her father's shoulder. "Mom would have loved her even more after this," Emily said softly. "Your mom would have loved knowing her daughter had the courage to ask for help," James replied, wrapping his arm around Emily's shoulders. "She always said Mitchell women don't quit. But I think she'd add now, Mitchell women aren't afraid to accept help when they need it either." 2 weeks later, Emily packed for college. Her room slowly emptied as boxes were loaded into the truck, now running smoothly after proper repairs. James helped carry her belongings, fighting the urge to hold on too tightly to this last summer with his daughter at home. "You're going to be fine," Emily said, reading his expression as they loaded the last box. "The farm is stable. You've got help if you need it. Bill Cooper said he'd check on you weekly. Rachel's dad offered to help with the harvest. You're not alone anymore, Dad." "I know," James said, though his throat felt tight. "I'm proud of you, Em. Your mom would be so proud of who you've become." "She'd be proud of you too," Emily replied, "for fighting, for accepting help, for keeping her promise about my education." The drive to Oklahoma State University took 3 hours. James helped Emily move into her dorm room, met her roommate, a friendly girl from Tulsa named Jessica, and took the obligatory photos in front of the university sign. When it was time to say goodbye, they stood in the parking lot, neither wanting to be the first to let go. "Call me any time," James said. "I mean it. Day or night. Even if you just want to talk about nothing." "I will," Emily promised. "And I'm coming home every other weekend, at least at first. Someone needs to make sure you're eating properly and not working yourself to death." James laughed, wiping his eyes. "Deal." He watched her walk back toward her dorm, turning to wave one last time before disappearing inside. The campus buzzed with energy, hundreds of students starting new chapters, pursuing dreams, building futures. His daughter was one of them now, and despite the ache in his chest, James felt grateful. The drive home felt longer than 3 hours. The farmhouse was too quiet when he arrived, empty in a way it hadn't been since Catherine died. But this emptiness felt different. Not the hollow absence of loss, but the natural space created when someone you love spreads their wings. James walked through the house, noticing small changes Emily had left behind. A note on the refrigerator. "Don't forget to eat vegetables, Dad. Mom would haunt you if you lived on coffee and crackers." A photo she'd printed and framed on the mantel. The 3 of them from 5 years ago at the county fair. All smiling, all together, all healthy. A list of emergency contacts pinned to the bulletin board, with Reba McEntire's foundation number at the top. He ended up on the porch as the sun set, Catherine's guitar in his hands. He'd been practicing, slowly learning the chords to "The Greatest Man I Never Knew." His fingers were clumsy, the notes imperfect, but he played through it anyway, thinking about his grandfather who'd bought this land with oil field wages, his father who'd expanded and modernized it, Catherine who'd loved every inch of it, and Emily who would carry it into the future. The fields stretched out before him, green and growing despite the Oklahoma heat. The irrigation system hummed its steady rhythm. Cattle grazed in the distance. Everything that had nearly been lost was now thriving again, given a second chance by courage and community, and one country music star who'd remembered her roots. James's phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Made it to my first class, agricultural economics. Professor seems cool. Miss you already. Love you, Dad." He texted back, "Love you too, sweetheart. Your mom would be so proud. I am too." Another text came through, this one from Tom Henderson. "Got some extra hay this season if you need it. Community dinner at the church Saturday. You should come. You're not allowed to be a hermit anymore." James smiled. He'd spent so long trying to handle everything alone, convinced that asking for help was weakness. But Reba had taught him. Emily had taught him. Catherine had tried to teach him all along that strength wasn't about carrying burdens alone. Strength was about being vulnerable enough to let others help carry them. He responded to Tom, "I'll be there. And thanks." As darkness fell across Mitchell Farm, James remained on the porch, watching fireflies emerge in the gathering dusk. Somewhere in the distance, a nightbird called out, and another answered. The land that had nearly been lost now pulsed with life and promise. 3 generations of Mitchells had fought for this soil, and now a 4th would have the chance to continue that legacy. Not because of one person's superhuman strength, but because of community, compassion, and the willingness to believe that some things, family, heritage, connection to the land, were worth saving. James thought about the letter Emily had written in desperate hope, about Reba reading it and choosing to act, about thousands of strangers coming together to support a family they'd never met. It was proof that even in hard times, even when everything seemed lost, goodness still existed in the world. People still cared. Communities still rallied. "We did it, Kat," James whispered to the night. "Our girl's going to college. The farm's going to survive. We actually made it through." The wind picked up, rustling through the cornstalks with a sound like whispered approval. James could almost hear Catherine's voice in it. "I never doubted you for a second, James Mitchell. Not for 1 second." He picked up the guitar again and played through the song one more time, imperfect but earnest. When he finished, he looked up at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. The same stars that had looked down on this land for 100 years, that would look down on it for 100 more. Mitchell Farm would endure, not just as acreage and buildings, but as a testament to resilience, to the power of asking for help, to the extraordinary things that happen when people choose compassion over indifference. And somewhere in Nashville, Reba McEntire probably sat in her own home, satisfied with a day's work well done, planning the next family she could help, the next story she could amplify, the next legacy she could preserve. Because that's what people who never forget where they came from do. They reach back and pull others forward, creating chains of hope that stretch across generations and miles, proving that no one has to face their darkest moments alone. James Mitchell understood that now, and he would spend the rest of his life paying that lesson forward, one conversation at a time, one helping hand at a time, one saved family at a time. The farm was saved. The family was intact. The future was possible. And Catherine's spirit, woven into every fence post and field row, every sunset and storm, smiled down on them all.